Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Vistatec Life Sciences in Focus podcast, fascinating conversations with global life sciences experts. As you know, this is a space where we interview life sciences experts once a month, and I'm your host, María Mateos. I'm very excited today to be talking to our amazing guest, Andrei Ninu, who is a highly experienced regulatory expert specializing in active medical devices, and he has a strong focus on functional and software safety, as well as AI applications in healthcare. He has extensive expertise in EU regulatory compliance, particularly in certification and conformity assessment processes for medical device manufacturers. Thank you so much for joining, Andrei.
Thank you so much, Maria, for the introduction.
We're delighted to have you. And I know you've recently published a very insightful piece discussing how AI in medical devices is now regulated, not just by MDR, but also by the new EU AI Act. So for companies developing AI-driven devices, this could feel like overwhelming, to say the least. So I'd love to kick off things here by asking you if you could give us a quick overview of what manufacturers should know about this intersection between these two regulations. That sound okay to you?
Yeah, great question. Indeed. So as you already mentioned, navigating both medical device regulation and AI Act can seem overwhelming at first, right? But if you delve into deepness and you understand how they relate, things becomes more manageable, right? Well, to begin with, MDR, as we all know, MDR is focused on medical devices only, right? While AI Act is a horizontal regulation, meaning it's not industry specific, right? This means that for manufacturers of AI-driven medical devices, right? You see there is a combination of both of them. Manufacturers have to comply with a double set of requirements, right? As an example, they have to establish a technical documentation for their products. They need to have a quality management system in place, right, for MDR and for AI Act. They need to have a risk assessment, a risk management system, a post-market surveillance system, a vigilance. Very important, so a reporting system to the authorities in case of events. Well, and here is, as you have indicated in the question, in the introductory question, double requirements means also double effort for manufacturers. They can be indeed overwhelming. Well, so the good news here is that these two regulations share common principles, so they share key requirements, and this make this integration of both regulations so more easy, right? So others said, so if you have a technical documentation which is already compliant with the medical device regulations, this would mean that 80% you are also with AI Act compliant, right?
Yeah, 80% sounds pretty much harmonized.
Yes, but it is, of course, 80%. So it is just a kind of estimation, right? So the content is more or less the same when we talk about safety, for example, right? So medical device regulations has as main goal safety. AI Act, in addition to that, has also fundamental rights, right? They are not entirely aligned, but spending some energy and time and trying to really understand what is meant with that, you will find a common point, and you can use same things for both conformity assessment procedures. And this is what we wanted also to address with our paper, right? You mentioned at the beginning in your question, this paper we have already published. So we tried to make this analogy. We said, for example, we addressed the data, right? The data, which is very important for AI systems, can be seen as an equivalent to raw materials for the medical device, right? For physical. Well, when you manufacture a medical device, you need to know exactly what are the materials used for your product, specifications, biocompatibility, a clear traceability. You need some tests, and so on and so forth. And the same principles are valid also for AI Act. Also, when this step looks a little bit, maybe too large, the main principles are the same. Or another example we have indicated in our paper is about life management, right? So the process developing these devices. So a key is here traceability and transparency, right? So if you are able to continually trace what you do, and you have a rationale for whatever you do, you can easily be compliant, right? I made even the exercise. 62304 is an established standard in our industry. In medical devices, is a harmonized standard, right? And I made the exercise to translate the requirements of 62304 for AI devices, and it works, right? It works. Okay, and the very last point we have indicated in our paper is about the post-market clinical follow-up, right? The post-surveillance. Okay. Of course, now with AI Act, post-market surveillance is more precisely described, right? So you need some log files and so on. You have to clearly monitor the performance of your AI system. But these requirements are not written in MDR explicitly, but as an example, you cannot imagine cybersecurity without log files, right? So if you want to ensure that your device is safe and secure, you need to implement these log files as being state-of-the-art. Well, and so with our paper, we tried to find some parallels and communicate the message. An integrated management system is key here, right? Don't start everything from scratch, right? Try to use your current system, try to understand your current system, how to integrate effectively new requirements, and it will be easier as you think.
Well, that's encouraging for sure. And I like how practical you are when explaining this, and how you draw parallelisms and analogies to explain this better. That's amazing. So moving into our next question, and I'm sure you already started explaining this a little bit. I'm wondering, how should companies document AI model training and updates in a way that satisfies both MDR and AI Act? I'm wondering if this is realistically feasible for this rapid evolving AI models.
Yeah, that's a very nice question, a relevant and timely question. I mean that because not long ago, there were strong voices suggesting that evolving AI systems shall not be certified, right? And this concern is somehow understandable, right? A system that changes the behavior may be seen as not safe enough, right? People feel uncomfortable with that, so that the behavior may be unpredictable. But so let's say, so rather than banning adaptive medical systems, the focus has shifted now to structured risk management. So the models that remain static actually underperform over time, and this opens the door for a controlled adaptation within limits. So a level of adaptability should not be seen as a threat, but it seems to be a future, right? It can be seen as a future. The issue here is this adaptability shall be clearly and transparently documented. So even AI Act offers the possibility for this adaptability, and as long as the systems change their behavior within the predefined limits, this is not even seen as a significant change.
Okay, that's a very good point. And again, encouraging. We are bringing the good news today.
Okay, great.
So now I'd like us to focus for a moment in small and mid-sized medtech companies, for example. So what pragmatic steps do you recommend right now to prepare for these regulatory shifts? Where should they be focusing their compliance efforts?
Yeah, that's a great question again. The first and the most pragmatic step may be to ensure that you have the right people in place, right? And I would start here with the regulatory team, right? So as I previously mentioned, it is very critical for the regulatory team not to start everything from scratch, right? To start with a lot of work with parallel requirements and so on, and but to try to integrate as best as possible the requirements from both worlds. And this can be done only by people who understand what the engineers are doing, right? So this is something I see very often. So there is a very big gap between the regulatory people, right, with a lot of regulations and laws and so on, and the engineers doing the real work, right? So trying to bridge these two worlds is a very important step. Well, then I would go for other roles. So I would set a focus on people, right? Because I've seen very often this AI system as a kind of one-man show, right? And it is actually not realistic, only few people to cover all requirements posed by these systems. And in case a group of people, a startup and so on, cannot deliver everything, right, it is very important to have different cooperations with industries, with universities, with different peers and so on. One of the most relevant examples are the data scientists, right? So I've seen very often a lot of engineers, so machine learning engineers, ML ops engineers, very skilled in training stuff and so on. But during the discussion, it was very clear that there was not a clear understanding of the data sets, right? So you have a data set, you have defined the claims, the medical claims and so on. And it is essential to understand what this data is telling you, right? Because only this way you can find the right model to fit your data, right? Well, so data scientists is indeed a very big, a very important part in this big picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're saying about the importance of the people and them communicating with each other across teams and bridging these differences, I guess it applies to so many industries, not just this, but it's a really good point. So I'll move into my next question and I'll shift topics a little bit because I understand there's an upcoming article about AI in healthcare now. And this topic is also an ever evolving one. So could you give us like a preview of best practices in this area? I'm sure our audience would like to know how can manufacturers ensure clinical relevance and avoid data leakage, which is a complicated topic these days when working with real world medical data.
Yeah, so indeed, I've been working on a paper titled Partitioning Data for Clinical Trust. Sounds great, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. I'm very much looking forward to it. And that's a recommendation for our audience for later during this podcast.
Yes, I would be very happy to make make the paper published to everybody. Um, well, one central point of this paper is how seemingly simple decisions like splitting the data can fundamentally change the performance of the system, right? So you can have a lot of data, whatever you need. You can have data scientists, as we have seen. You can have great hardware to run your systems and so on. But if this data partitioning is not done appropriately, then the whole performance is not clinically relevant, right? And it was a very funny. And yeah, in general, these problems have a source, namely misunderstanding. So terminology plays a very important role here. So in this paper, this paper actually was inspired by a real discussion with a manufacturer during an audit. The manufacturer they had an AI device for radiology, right, for diagnostics in radiology. Well, and there were some experts, medical experts, who annotated all these data sets. Among these data sets, they had some edge cases, so very interesting cases, right? These doctors were very excited about these cases, right? And they used these data sets after labeling annotation, right, for training, and then they have decided to introduce these edge cases, right? So the rare diseases
Yes.
into the test data set, because they said, well, now I want to see if the AI system is also able to make the same decisions, recommendations as I have done, right? And this seems very meaningful, right? Nobody was against. Well, but if you are doing so, the performance of the AI system is biased, right? So actually, you are testing what you tell the system to do, right? And it is not sufficiently general. So what the medical doctors wanted to achieve was very understandable, right? So they have labeled some very interesting images with the right answers, and they wanted to see if the AI is able to provide the same outcome. Well, so with this purpose, they have introduced these edge cases in the test data set, right? And this is contradicting one of the fundamental principles of AI, right? So, namely, the test data set shall be entirely independent. Well, but if so, we continued the discussion, and we have seen that there was indeed a misunderstanding, a small one, namely, testing in AI is not same testing as it is for regular medical devices, right? So testing for medical devices is a kind of pass-fail, right? Is a digital outcome, and the medical doctor wanted to see if there is a pass. Is the AI able to identify my picture? Yes or no, right? So this was the expectation. But in the AI world, testing is not like that. So testing is allowing for a statistical description of the whole performance, right? So you have a bunch of metrics, performance metrics, right? And altogether allows you a clear understanding of the performance of your AI system. Well,
Oh, that's very interesting. And I love that this came from a real world example, like a real world case. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
yeah.
And I find it very interesting that this came from a real world example, a real problem that you were helping to solve. And Thanks so much for sharing. And when it comes to evaluating AI systems clinically, what metrics do you consider essential beyond technical performance, for example? Should companies focus just on technical accuracy, or are regulators looking for proof of real benefits to patients?
Well, so this is a key question. This is a key question. So it is not the very first time I heard it, right? And the answer would be both, right? So it's both. It's both because they are related, right? So they are not independent. So at first, a medical device manufacturer, so the first thought they need to have in mind is what are the clinical claims, right? And these clinical claims shall be very specific. So this is, again, another pitfall in our industry. So the manufacturers want to cover as much as possible with their products, but doing so, there will be a very big issue with supporting these claims with appropriate metrics, right? So the first message would be try to be as specific as possible with intended purpose, intended users with the claims. Right? And these claims shall be meaningful for the patients. This is half of your question. Well, but in AI, these claims can only be sustained by appropriate metrics, right? And as I previously said, in trying to answer the previous question, not only one metric, but a bunch of metrics. I have received technical files as an example in which the performance was characterized by accuracy, right? I say accuracy, as you also indicated, technical accuracy. And the accuracy was about 95, 98%, right? You say, oh, great, nice, right? But if you go a little bit deeper and you try to understand how this accuracy has been calculated, you see that this number, right, is not really meaningful. And trying to explain what I mean. So what is actually accuracy? Is true positive, right, plus true negative divided by true positive, true negative, false negative, false. So in other words, everything which is correctly answered divided by the total number of observations. Okay? So if you answer all questions correctly, you have 100% accuracy.
Okay.
Okay. But this accuracy is meaningful only when the data set is balanced, right? This means you have a data set with 50% positives and 50% negatives, right? If you have a data set with 95% positive and only 5% negative, then whatever you do, you achieve 95% accuracy, which is wrong, is meaningless, right? And this is the reason. So in general, you cannot balance the data sets as you would like. So we have here only a simple case with only two classes. But if you have many classes, as it is usual, it is very, very difficult to get these data sets balanced. And the only possibility you have is to have some metrics splitted, right, for the positives, for the negatives. So in the statistical world, they are precision, for example, mostly focused on the positive side. Or if you want to find a balance between positive and negative, you go also for recall, so the sensitivity. Or there are also some other metrics balancing both, so F1 score. So this topic is so great and so complicated.
But it deserves
it
a
is
full
a must.
article.
Yes, it is a must for. So an AI system without such a statistical assessment is meaningless.
Good. Well, that was a great explanation. And again, I'm very much looking forward to your article and read it and digest it. Thank you so much for today, Andrei. I'm sorry we need to come to an end here, but before we go, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience?
Thank you. Indeed, I would like to leave the audience with a few final thoughts.
Yes,
Right.
please.
Well, in the world of AI healthcare, so navigating uncertainty become part of everyday life, right? Everyday reality. And one of the most valuable lessons we have learned, so for the manufacturers of medical devices, I mean, is that key is getting timely in touch with the notified body, right? So there is very often we see the case that the manufacturers are waiting until the end, until everything is done, is ready, and then they start with the submission. Then they get non-conformities, then move back and forth, and so on. And so we are aware of the complexity of this topic. This cannot be achieved in one shot, right? So this is the reason why at TechQuest we have opened the door for these structured dialogues, right? So structured dialogues means we split this conformity assessment into individual steps, right? With some clearly defined milestones, right? And this allows the manufacturers for more predictability, costs, and more transparency, right? So by using this offer, we avoid also a lot of back and forth, and we hope that together we will move only straight forward.
Yes, it's great to hear that we are finally starting to find some answers to all the questions marks we have had for a while. So thank you so much, Andrei, for your insights today, and thank you to our audience. This Life Sciences in Focus podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other leading platforms, as well as on YouTube if you prefer to watch us. So please make sure to tune in again next month for Vistatec Life Sciences in Focus, fascinating conversations with global life sciences experts. Thank you.